And I'm Gabe.
And we're
the Ghouls next door. Oh, that was good.
Yeah, we're beautiful.
That was on
singing.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome.
We've done this before. It's
to
crazy.
our podcast lair.
Yeah.
So this is our representation series.
I like how you just say like you're like really like authoritatively telling people. You're just like, this is our representation
You signed
series.
up for this, listener. Yeah. And today we are talking about Latinx representation in horror. And honestly, I could talk about that for several hours all by myself. But I feel like you guys get that enough. Anytime there's a woman, a woman-themed conversation. So.
Yeah, Gabe has lots of words. Yeah. But to help with that, we brought a guest.
We brought other words. So welcome our first ever return guest.
I know. You are the only return guest that has ever been.
Yeah.
Ooh, cool.
Sergio Galeano. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome back to the lair.
I feel, well, I mean, this is the new layer. I wasn't here last time we recorded. I love the space. So what you guys are doing?
Sergio, you've never left.
Yeah, you've always been here. You're not allowed to leave. So we're talking about Latinx representation. So why don't you tell our listeners why it's cool that we invited you?
I'm Latinx.
All right,
yeah,
check.
I feel a personal attachment to the material we're going to discuss tonight, and yeah, I mean, I like hearing my own voice.
Yes, because you also have a radio show. You
That's
can
right.
plug it. I'll allow it.
Yeah. It's a live update. It comes out on WPPM 106.5 FM. It's going to be kind of a monthly show about music news. So if you're interested in that, you can listen to me there.
Yeah, and that's important because the first episode that we have Sergio on is our horror music scores. So it was about films and what their scores do for them. And we talked Suspiria, which is fun.
Yeah, real fun, actually. Crazy score. You go back and listen to that episode. That was a keeper.
Yeah.
For context, I'm making this face because it's like the first time I've ever heard your like radio voice. And I was like, whoa, that's different than his regular voice. And it really just was like, I was like, what is happening? I feel like I'm next to a radio person.
Well, thank you.
But it was oh my God, it's weird. But it's good. I'm normal and calm.
I'm good. Yeah. So, so one thing I wanted to point out to start before we even jump in, because we're going to do our facts section, is that when we use the term Latinx, I'm sure people are like, what is that? What do you mean? So specifically, it refers to people whose origin or ancestry is in Latin America and excludes Spain specifically, right? Because most people are like, you're Spanish. And it's like, no, that's a language, or where a person is from if they're from Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people from Latino America, you could say.
Yeah, and it's essentially like, this is what separates Hispanic or Spanish people, because the word Hispanic refers to people of Spanish-speaking descent, but that doesn't count for things like Brazil, who don't. So it's just like, that doesn't count. But essentially Latinx will cover anyone from Latin backgrounds. So that's Puerto Ricans like myself, Colombians like Sergio, Dominicans, Mexicans, and a whole lot of others who are not Spanish. So I just want to start with that. Like, we're not going to be talking about Spanish people because that's different. We're covering us like Caribbean type people.
Yeah, south of the border.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if that's news to you, now you know.
Yes, yeah. And it's in Latinx is so that it can be gender neutral, because the Spanish language does tend to be gendered a lot of the times. So this is a good way to include everyone, not just like, we're not Latino or Latina or Latinx. So yeah. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about more on that and why it's important that we are on screen.
Dope.
Yeah, facts. We tell you facts. All the facts. Your facts. Stuff facts. About that spooky stuff. Yeah, spooky stuff.
So we're talking Latinx representation. I think what is really interesting about the fact that there is a lack of Latinx representation, specifically in American horror, is that a lot of the audience is Latinx, because we have like an interest in the supernatural and like the spooky, because it's just like ingrained into society with like stories and folklore that you grow up with. So like we're obviously interested in that stuff. So it's really weird that like, why wouldn't you feature more of us doing stuff? Like we're also a good part of this population as well. We're here. We out here.
We out here.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, it's funny, like as a Latinx person, and when I see, especially even just like in mainstream movies, not just horror, right? Like it's always very pigeonholed, and we're not the only minority to fall into
pretty
this.
Much anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much anyone that isn't white, right? And so, yeah, it's really sad to not see it at all in horror. Like I almost don't see anyone like me at all in horror ever.
Unless it's Guillermo Del Toro, and then it's like obviously, but unless it's explicitly like a Latinx person behind the camera, you're not getting that in front. And that's just like, so growing up as specifically being Latin American, right? Like you're an American person and you're growing up in this very white culture that you don't really get to experience a lot of that. And it's almost like, you know, you hear like the immigrant stories and like the first generation, second generation being afraid to speak Spanish. Like we have even just like Julian Castro, who doesn't speak Spanish very well because he grew up and was like, you know, seen as kind of like wrong. Like you don't want to, like they don't want you to speak Spanish because they want you to fit in, and like a lot of those like cultures and things. So it's really interesting growing up in a country where you are and you do see people who look like you, but not on screen, right? Like I always had that problem of there's no Hispanic Disney princess. Like we have plenty of Latin countries, but not a single princess who is of Latin descent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, growing up for me anyway, I unfortunately wasn't even around many people like me, you know, so not only was in the mainstream, but also in class, you know, because, you know, I went to private schools and, you know, there weren't that many Latinx people in those schools. And so, you know, it was interesting. And I didn't even realize it until later on. You end up being whitewashed just by existing.
Yeah, just to fit in. And then there's this really amazing quote that really like fuels a lot of the work that I do when I create media. And it's by Juno Diaz, where essentially he says like, I'm going to like butcher this because I don't have the exact quote, but it's essentially like, he says, you know, vampires, there's that whole thing where they can't see their reflection. And it's essentially like, if you can't see yourself, like that's what defined that monster. So if we're not seeing ourselves on screen, are we also monsters? Like, is something wrong with us that we aren't being seen on screen?
Yeah, it's heavy.
And it was, and it's something that I saw somewhere just offhandedly and was like, wow, no, you're totally right. Like that we do got to see ourselves. Like if we're not seeing ourselves, like where are we? Who are we? And like we've touched on this when we talked about like, you know, Black women or sex workers, is this idea of like, if you're being represented a certain way as well, that's also harmful, because if that's the only like understanding of your culture that someone else is getting because they don't encounter like Latin American people, then like everyone's going to think that that's what you are. Like we are just the cholos, right? We're just like the sassy Latina friends.
Right. We speak a certain way. We act a certain way. We like specific things. I mean, a lot of stereotypes probably just come directly from these specific kinds of representation that show up in the media. And yeah, it's just kind of not fair, right? Because you end up meeting people later on in life. Like when I moved away from Florida, where I grew up, and I came up north, everybody just thought I was a certain way, and I was not that way at all, you know. So
it's like, oh, sorry to disappoint, but I am I'm just me. And you don't fit that like stereotype of a culture, and it's kind of sad because it's like, why do these exist? Or even like the fact that we have like Latinx covers a lot of different like areas, right? So Puerto Ricans are very different from Dominicans and from Colombians and like Venezuelans. Like they're all different, right? But like if someone sees the one, I can't tell you how many times people have been like, "Are you Mexican?" I'm like, I don't think I look Mexican, but of course you wouldn't know that if you've only seen like one Hispanic person. Like, and you were just like, oh, then they all are from Mexico, I guess. But yeah, so that's why it's super important to have Latinx stories and telling them on screen. But there's also, like I was saying, this very rich history of folklore, right? So like, so Edward Pagan, who runs LatinHorror.com, which is a website for Latinx horror files, has said essentially why Latinx people are interested in the genre is that traditionally we have always loved ghost stories and the macabre and gothic tales. They're just sewn into the fabric of who we are as a people. So essentially Latinx people grow up hearing scary stories featuring like the El Cucuy, the El Chupacabra, which we talked about, and who we're going to talk about more in depth today is La Llorona.
El Cucuy. I haven't heard that name since I was a child.
Bringing it back. Yeah, it's as for anyone who's unfamiliar, it's essentially like the boogeyman, right? It's like, this is what's going to get you if you're bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah. And things like that, they're pervasive, right? They don't just exist in Mexico, Dominican Republic, all around Middle America. Cucuy was something that my uncles on my father's side from the DR, like they would say, you know, si tú no te, you know, if you don't behave yourself, te va a llevar, el cucuy te va a llevar, you know, they're gonna get you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just a funny thing.
Yeah. There's and that's everywhere. Everyone has a boogeyman, right? And we have, and it's like, these are really interesting stories. Where are they? And then when we see them, they are only ever told from the white protagonist's point of view, because that's what sells, or that's what they believe sells. But we've seen, like with the, you know, success of Jordan Peele, and even just like some, like there's clearly a demand for more people of color in a diverse like story that we're looking for. So where are they? Why do we get a half of it? Why do we get like an inch? I want the mile. I want a mountain. I want a Latinx superhero. Yes. I want a Latinx princess. I want it.
You know, I want it too. And it's interesting because it's like, I always feel as though somehow, for some reason, Hollywood just doesn't know how to sell it, you know, and they don't know how to, especially, and it's even harder in a horror context, you know, when you get into specific genres about it, because then every third line, every other character makes some sort of reference to the stereotype, even if it's like to hang a lantern on it, you know what I mean? As opposed to like actually, you know, play into the stereotype, but more so like say, oh, I bet everybody says this or whatever, you know, and it seems as though it's like, even when they try, they never quite get there. And I almost, part of me says like, I don't even want the full on ensemble cast of Latino American people. Sometimes I kind of just want the main character to have his Asian friend go out, you know, or his black girlfriend just go to the movies and, you know, a murderer shows up in a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like something interesting, something, you know, and I feel like television does a better job than films do, but that's just,
Yeah, well, even like something like Us, right, where it features a black family, but that's not like what it's about, right? It's about classism and other things, and it just happens to feature a black family, which seems crazy because that's not what we're used to. But it's like, why can't we have that? Well, we just have protagonists that are, you know, Latinx, but they're not. It's not about that.
It's not about, right. Yeah.
We just also exist. We also just have lives, and they're not always like caught up in gangs, and it's not always like we're clutching our rosary beads and have like a million crosses on the wall. Although Catholicism is a big part of the Latinx community, which is why things like, you know, exorcism movies or movies that feature any type of like brujas, like, right, like witchcraft and all kinds of that, like if that's there, they're in it, they're in the audience, right. Because they believe that, like there's a very full and complete understanding and belief in this battle between good and evil, so we can watch it on screen because we're like, yeah, of course. The one thing I would forgive is every Latino American person has an abuela, you know what I mean? So I'd be okay with an abuela showing up, but after that it's like, come on. She always knows what's going on. Apparently I found according to this blog on the LA Times, that 54% of the attendees to the last exorcism were Latinx. Because it's just like 50, that's crazy. That's half of who watched that were Latinx. And it wasn't for us. Yeah, it just happened to be, you know, featuring exorcisms, which is like, also the last exorcism is a really great film. Yeah, that was crazy. I would... there's some tropes and things that we see on screen. What, Sergio, do you think are some of the tropes that you're familiar with seeing Latinx people play?
Oh, I mean, take a page from Marvel, right? You got the guy who speaks really fast, doesn't really know what's going on, kind of confused about everything, obsessed with, whatever his wife is telling him, obsessed with, constantly repeating things about, what his mom tells him about, which honestly, most Latinx men have interesting relationships with mothers anyway. But, it's very much a you'll end up finding the person dressing a specific way as well, with a specific kind of accent and a specific jargon that is normally just associated with Mexicans as opposed to, Latinx people overall. And, maybe that person could be Mexican, but it's never really overtly, explicitly said, so people are just assuming that person's Mexican, which is kind of worse.
Added significantly to the problem.
Well, it's kind of like when you have if you have a film and you're like, oh, finally, if it's a Japanese lead, right? But it's like, oh, finally there's representation, but then the character's supposed to be Chinese or Korean, and you're like, not all of them are the same. What are you doing? That happens a lot with even just thinking Selena, right, with Jennifer Lopez. She is not Mexican. She's Puerto Rican, and she played Selena. So it's we also don't get cast properly as well. So there's a lack of representation or misrepresentation there. And there's also, I would say, because of it, oftentimes having a character where English is their second language, that there's also this interpretation that they're not smart. Because they're delayed and they're unable to communicate. But it's these people could be doctors. What are you talking? Why is everyone slow? We're not all slow. What do you mean? And it's always the goof, the one who's aloof, the one who's the fun, snarky guy who's I'm just razzing you, that kind of character.
Or they even have a short temper. I see that a lot. Latinos that are spicy.
Yeah, if you get any Latinx woman on screen, she's definitely spicy. She's definitely got an attitude. She's usually promiscuous, right? We also have the problem with exoticism and being a commodity of oh, that's a hot Latin woman, right? And it's we have women who are asexual. We have women who aren't like that. What are you talking about? But it's always she'll corrupt you in some way. She's also stemmed to that.
Yeah, and I think if it goes back to who's writing the scripts, who's directing it, is it a white person? Then that kind of leads it in the misrepresentation direction. And as you were saying, you see that a lot in Asian films too, because or not Asian films, but films about Asian things written by people who aren't Asian, just being oh yeah, you're Chinese. That's what that is. And it's no,
we did good.
No, and it's just not recognizing that there's different varieties of a culture. Because if you have Asian people, you have East Asian, South Asian. And same thing with Latinx. You have different countries within there that fill all different realms, and then a white person goes to the movies and is Mexican.
Yeah.
And it's not. It doesn't.
No.
It's not.
Yeah. I would even say, so I think one of the glaring reasons, in my opinion, that we don't see a lot of Latinx representation is that we would fill a lot of the same roles that the Black character would play. Right? We're the friends who ask if you're okay. We're the big bad guy who gets killed by the bigger bad guy, right? So if there's already a Black person written into that script, we don't serve a purpose and we don't need to be there. They can't have two.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's one or the other, or the second choice even.
Yeah, we're just kind of added in as background. And then as soon as you're cast, now it becomes now we gotta make this about commentary about being Latinx. Now we gotta throw it in there. It's you could have just wrote me in as a character. And you were saying, Kat, kind of on that idea of it's not only our representation on screen, but also behind the camera, right? Because that greatly impacts. And I would say we have a stronger presence behind the camera than in front of it. I can't really think of any actors that are Latinx in horror films.
I Googled it, so.
What does it say?
I'm waiting.
Oh, they're waiting.
So I'm going to go off a little list here.
Sure, let's see. Let's hear it.
So we have No Country for Old Men, which I don't know if that's a horror movie. Is that a horror movie?
It's like suspense, I would say. I don't know if I would say horror movie. People get killed.
So
People
Javier
get got.
Bardem.
People do get
Javier. Yeah, that makes sense.
I was going to say Penelope Cruz.
Penelope
Penelope
Cruz
Cruz
and
has been
Gothica.
in stuff.
Eva Mendes and Children of the Corn 5, Fields of Terror.
That
I
doesn't
did not
count.
know there
I
was a
didn't know
5.
that existed.
It doesn't count.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, Jordana Brewster.
Jordana Brewster.
I'm
sorry.
Is she Latina?
No, that's good. Yeah, she's
Really?
from Fast and Furious.
Camilla Bell, When a Stranger Calls.
Benicio del Toro.
Yes. Duh. Well, that's on me.
Yes, occasionally, but not like
It's not
heavily
prevalent,
represented.
And Penelope's been in a few things because she's in that one I was just talking about. But even like behind the camera, right? We have
Javier
Guillermo.
Bardem was in Mother as well.
Oh, right, yes. Javier Bardem is great.
Yeah, he's great.
Phenomenal. So he's representing us out there. Dusk Until Dawn. See what I'm saying? Yes. So we have George A. Romero, right? He's one of the fathers of horror, really, specifically with all the zombie movies. He did it. He doesn't cast us as much, but he's out there. He's doing it, right? Or he was doing it. RP. And we have Robert Rodriguez with that campy gore kind of fun films, which also features like people of color who are in starring roles, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Like their protagonists. He just has a good time. And then Guillermo, which he is definitely owed like his own episode. There's no way. I will say this about Guillermo though, is that he's Mexican. It's great. He's getting a star in Hollywood, but he does tend to do a lot of his films about Spain or featuring like Spanish wars or Spanish situations. So it's like, what are we doing? Although his newest movie, which we will talk about a little bit in the section.
I think to speak on that, I think that he has a big interest in colonialism and conquistadors.
Yeah.
Which does translate into Latin American culture, especially Mexican culture, I think. So I mean, I think that it stems from sort of just this traditional idea of what Spanish culture can be and how it influenced Latino America. But yeah, I think he is also could just be marketing it to a European audience and hoping it goes overseas and stuff.
And I think it's also like he likes history and he likes to make commentary on like what was happening socially. So I do want to talk at some point about Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, just because he was a part of it, right? He's producing it, and because of that, there's a protagonist who is a Mexican boy. And he's like, he's there and he's not dying. He's he's holding out, right? Like he's one of the main kids. And it's really only because he's in it that like Guillermo's there, that boy is there, really. Like, I think if anyone else took on that film, it would be bad. But it wouldn't have that character, I don't think. What does it feel like to watch films and not see people who look like you?
Well, it's interesting because, like I said, I grew up around mostly white friends, just people who didn't exactly look like me, didn't speak Spanish, were amazed at this magic that I could do with my mouth by speaking another language. I always thought that was interesting. And then, just years and years of conditioning and whitewashing that way, I honestly just imagined the white kids as me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until much later, because I grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it wasn't until like high school, like late 2000s, when the world started getting a little more progressive in Hollywood, and people started saying, "Hey, wait a minute, where am I? Who's this?" And that's when I noticed that I haven't seen someone like me except for like Fast and Furious. Like I can't even imagine. Like I really don't remember any movies growing up anyway. Aside from like any Robert Rodriguez movies like Spy Kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I remember Spy Kids was a big thing for me.
My favorite.
Also pretty scary.
Yeah,
Spy Kids
thumb.
Messed up.
Thumb guys.
Messed up stuff. But it was like, that's the
like
thing.
27 times just for random fun facts about me.
It's like, that's the thing, right? It's like, movies like that were always way more interesting to me, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it until much later. And I think that that's just part of the problem is that, you know, you end up being completely blind and nebulous to this. I don't know if I want to call it injustice, but definitely a misrepresentation of like who I am. And I ended up, I think, in my formative years, really influencing the kind of person I am too, which for better or for worse, I don't know. But I mean, it definitely isn't what many Latino Americans might consider me. Because I have had the conversation, right?
Yeah. With
other Latinx folks. It's like, you know, you act white, you talk white. And I think a lot of minorities have also had this conversation with their peers of their same background. And so it's like, it's a hard conversation to have because, you know, it's not fair that a person would grow up in an environment that just wasn't the same as, you know, just wasn't homogeneous as everyone else had the same traditions and stuff like that. And so I don't know, it definitely created a sort of split mindset for me, never seeing myself out there and kind of whitewashed my identity, I would say.
Would you I feel like people of color always get this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Was there ever, like, do you possibly remember like one of the first times where you were like, wait a second, am I different from what everyone else is? Like, was there ever a time where maybe someone said something and you were like, oh, that's not, I am different?
Well, it's interesting. I remember, I guess that's the thing, right? Is like, there was always that like, oh, say something in Spanish. You know what I mean? It was always that. And so I always knew I was different. And I'm not sure that it was necessarily a desire for me to want to be like them, or like my white friends. But I don't know. It wasn't even really a moment more of it was like, I want to take more pride in it. You know what I mean? And I over time, I just kept saying that to myself, and it's still a struggle for me, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say there was not like a single time, but I did always know that I was different because I'm mixed, right? So, and I grew up with my mother, who is the white side of my family. And so I grew up always being surrounded by like my white family. Like my mom's blonde with blue eyes and like my like cousins are that. And I always grew up being a little different. And so even when my mother tried very, very hard, because she can speak Spanish fluently, she lived in Puerto Rico for many years, tried to teach me Spanish, I just wouldn't learn because I knew that just made me more different. Like that solidified that I am a different than everyone else. And so there was just no way I was going to do that. And I regret that a lot now. Like, and I wish like, you know, someone had taken me to the side and been like, it's okay that you're different. But I didn't have one of those people because it was still different people telling me that I was different kind of thing. And so now in like, you know, my modern life, you know, looking at those things and just being like, how can I like essentially, you know, like take back my heritage and then like, you know, own it. And kind of coming to that thing of like battling what I call like the imposter syndrome, where I feel like I don't even always like deserve to be angry about Latinx representation sometimes, because I'm like, who am I to say I haven't been doing this my whole life? But a part of that is because I wasn't seeing it, right? So it wasn't seen as a positive thing. It was because it wasn't there, it was negative. It wasn't other. It was like I was the monster and I'm the vampire. I do not see a reflection. So therefore I want to just mock and be everyone else so they don't notice that I'm different.
Yeah. I definitely see that and empathize with that. And it was also just a thing about, you know, you know, I'm sure every other minority has this exact experience, but it's like you almost cringe when you see someone like you come up, especially if they're not the main character, because it's like, oh God, what are they going to say? What are they going to make them do? Like, you know, what is it going to be now? How soon are they going to get killed off? You know what I mean? It's like, and then on top of that, you know, you get this sense of like, you know, that you yourself become like a background character in your own life, right? Because like if you're a background character in all of these stories, like how can you ever be the protagonist in your own life? And you start thinking to yourself like, yeah, it's just a toxic way to view your identity, honestly.
Yeah, it's just the sidekick. Like I always saw myself as the sassy sidekick in my own life. Like I was like, oh, clearly, like my white best friend is the protagonist of the story, and I'm the one who says the snarky things, and I'm the one who gets us in trouble. And that's still kind of how things end up being, especially with me and Kat.
You are the protagonist of this podcast. There is no world where I am the lead. I have been silent for 10 whole minutes. You are the protagonist of this podcast.
This episode is mine. Yeah.
No, like you are the protagonist. Don't stress that within the podcast.
No, yeah. Well, I just like there's always like this identity that you feel where you're like, I'm just like I'm here for comedic relief. I'm here to just do that, right? And it takes a lot of like unlearning and like taking back your identity. And if we had things on screen, which I think when we talk about scary stories to tell in the dark, seeing that boy was really awesome. I loved it. Thank you, Guillermo.
Films. Yeah, films. Yeah, films. We watched some films. Now let's talk about those films. And all that spooky stuff. And all that spooky stuff.
All right, so we watched some films as we do. Specifically, we watched The Curse of La Llorona, 2019. It's still in theaters? No? Yes? Maybe?
No, I think it's out.
Okay,
no,
just
it's
kidding.
like you can get it on like Amazon or something.
Okay, cool. So ignoring the eerie warning of a troubled mother suspected of child endangerment, a social worker and her own small kids are soon drawn into a frightening supernatural realm. Directed by Michael Chavez, and the director is a Portuguese American.
Yeah, which is I think is important to mention here. Which, I mean, it's cool, but yeah, it's important to know that he did, he did direct it, right? Portuguese American, he's in there. So essentially, it's the story of La Llorona, which is about a woman who is spurned by her lover, either because they've cheated on her, they've left her, they hurt her in some way, which is a general story we get, like we talked about even in our Japanese episode, right? And then out of her angst and their anguish, she drowns her children and then dies essentially from the guilt of doing that, and then is cursed to roam forever, finding other kids to drown because she's just stuck on that loop. As you do. You drown one kid, you just gotta keep going. No, don't do that. No one drown any babies.
Please.
So what is interesting is that it starts out where La Llorona traditionally is going after a Latinx family, a single mom who with two little Latinx boys, right? Yeah. And then this white woman who is the social worker takes her kids away. Classic story. And then they end up dying because of La Llorona. Spoilers. Yeah. And then the story is about this white family. The kids are half Hispanic, but they literally killed off screen before the movie started the Hispanic side of the family. The father was Latinx.
Weird choice.
Yeah, why not? Why couldn't he be white and she was Latinx, and then we just watched that family? Why did she have to be white?
I mean, she didn't have to be white at all.
Because they cast that actress, I think. Isn't that what it was ultimately?
They wanted a name.
They probably did it because it's safer. Because you can ensure that audiences are going to go watch this white woman.
Yeah.
They can relate to this white woman.
Quote. I have a real good quote. Are you ready for the quote? Yes. It's from dreadcentral.com, and I was just like, wow. So the movie tries so much to appeal to the non-Latino audience who isn't familiar with the legend that they took away everything that grounded the story of Mexican culture. So they were just like, all right, white people are going to come see this. We got to make it relevant for them.
Exactly.
And then ruined it.
I mean, I can understand how there's this title, the movie with the title La Llorona. It's literally in Spanish, right? It's a folktale that isn't well known in this country. How are we going to get people who don't know anything about La Llorona to come out to this? How are we going to get them to even relate to the characters and relate to the story that's happening? You got to cast a white person. So I can see why they would have chosen to make her white. That's fine. And I don't think that's And I don't think it's actually a problem that the main character is white. To be very clear, as a Latinx person, I don't really mind the fact that there's a lot of white people. What I would like is there to also be more brown people, right?
Yeah.
And so, I just thought it was weird that the husband wasn't there. Like, it's fine that the mom is the main character, and it makes sense because it kind of creates this dynamic between La Llorona and her, right? This like good mom versus bad mom, right? I guess you can see it that way. Mm-hmm. But like, their dad could have been there.
Yeah, he didn't have to be
or
dead.
could have died in the movie instead of just like never even been in the movie. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just weird that like he was even a character at all. Like, he could have also just not been a character.
It didn't add to the plot that he was dead.
You know what it added? It added that they were Latino. Right, the kids were actually Hispanic, and so
they could be Latino with him alive.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the crazy part. That's the crazy thing.
That's the only plot device he served.
Yeah, there's I think one of the glaring issues isn't just that we have this protagonist who's white. Again, like you said, that's fine, right? But it's that all the supporting casts are Latinx, and that they are viewed in a terrible light. No one is just like, right? Like, why couldn't we have a Latinx as the police officer? Right? Like, we had to cast this black man to be the police officer, which is fine, but it's like, why couldn't we? Right? Or why does the villain essentially have to be both La Llorona and this mother who lost her kids? So now, not only do we have the spooky Hispanic woman, but we also have one who's real, who's also evil, and she's like treated as being insane. And then off of that, the next other like Latinx person is essentially like a bruja. Like, he's just out there doing spells.
There's also the priest.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
from Annabelle.
Yes, the priest, because this is a part of the Annabelle, like The Conjuring and all of them in Lorraine series.
Yeah. Well, one thing it says also in this article is that it wasn't so much that, it was a white actress, is that they just made the story very vanilla, that like the story of La Llorona, no pun intended, the story of La Llorona was like more meaningful, and they just very much made it like a blanket ghost story to take away some of the actual like meaning and scariness of it. Like, they didn't actually make the first scene have any indication that they were in Mexico, and like all the other stuff is what it goes on to say. But is that they just made it more vanilla just to like appeal to a mainstream audience instead of like being respectful of the story. Yeah.
The same article goes on to state that the movie had so much potential that it could have brought all that the Latinx audience that loves horror films if we were front and center, because then it would be our story. But essentially a desire to appeal to those not aware of the folktale above all else ends up taking all Latino flavor out of the film. So it's just like, because they had to water it down, because they had to start from zero and just be like, hey, people who don't know what La Llorona is, we have to tell you about it. And so we are wasting time doing that without actually having like the fear of existing. Like, so kind of like when we talked about in foreign horror, when you tell the story of The Ring in Japan, then it's a different story, right? Like, they already know that story. So they believe it. We don't have to have all of that backlog. We can just be suspended into the disbelief. Whereas here in America, when it was brought over, there's so much explanation. There's a whole backstory that did not exist in the original, to the degree that it did, because it had to fill in the gaps for an American audience who they expect would be primarily white to believe and understand and not feel left out.
Yeah, and they didn't really do a good job telling the story though either. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just very generic, and like they said, La Llorona, there you go, you know it now. There's a necklace, the child's being drowned, like, but that was it. They didn't really go into further detail.
Well, you know what, I actually kind of like that, because here's the thing, right, is like, for growing up, La Llorona was a very, very basic story. My mom wouldn't always tell me, but when I was very, very young, my mother and my other aunts and uncles would say, if you don't behave, just like a cucuy, if you don't behave, La Llorona te va a llevar. She's gonna come and get you. She wouldn't say she would drown me. I later learned that she drowns her victims, which is horrifying and horrifying for my mother to imply.
Come drown you.
I'm like, whoa.
You're gonna get
That's a
Brush
lot.
your teeth, or it's just
But like, you know, back then it was like La Llorona was my boogeyman, more so than the Kukui.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I kind of liked that there wasn't much exposition. That first scene, I wish, yeah, I mean, it would have been cool to see more, definitely, because I would have loved to have seen because the story goes that her husband cheated on her, right? So I would have loved to see like her relationship with her husband. I would have loved to see like why she's just a little off, and like why she would drown her children, and why she was crying. Why is she La Llorona? Why is she crying so much? I wanted to see those tears. You know, I didn't even believe a lot of the sound effects of the crying either. Kind of felt like off. It didn't really match the action of the person playing La Llorona, the way she was crying, and I thought that was weird and off-putting, and it felt, you know, like it was a weird juxtaposition. So
yeah, it kind of, the crying in her being in like the corner reminded me of Left 4 Dead. When they have like the crying, so it's like, woo,
yeah, it did.
And then she like comes and attacks you. Yeah, every single time I was like, oh, here we go.
It just felt like this. It just felt like a dubbed sound.
Yeah,
like it wasn't like she was crying. And you know, it would have been way cooler to like actually cast somebody and see her drown her kids and just like devastated, crying. And I think that if the
she just seemed kind of like a little upset, like she like broke something.
Yeah, if the direction was like, you just gave us some more emphasis as to like how twisted this person is, I probably would have cared more about the monster, La Llorona, you know?
Yeah, I will say I enjoyed that we didn't have that cliche scene where they run to the library to look up what the story is, and or that they made La Llorona like modern.
Really happy
and there was like
this.
a modern woman. Yeah,
newspaper articles from 60 years prior.
La Llorona question mark, but with the question mark upside down on the outside too.
Yeah, like, but I imagine it being like one of those modern, like it was just like a Victorian Latin housewife who drowned her kids somehow, and then they're like, "Oh,
what's this?
Remember the Alamo? This was it.
Yeah,
this was the Alamo, guys. Like, where even were we? Like,
it was good that didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm real happy. Yeah.
I was very.
But I get what you're saying. With sort of like humanizes the villain of the story. That would have been cool, because that's ultimately what it was. It was a human person. Bad stuff happened. Murder happened because of bad stuff happening, and then ghost.
Yeah.
So like they were a person at one point, and that would have been cool to see.
That's what I was expecting to happen, and it never did.
No.
But
well, like kind of did, but it wasn't satisfying.
Right.
No, every Latinx person in this film was a tool. They were some implement for this protagonist to just defeat her for whatever reason. Yeah. And it was sad because you had an opportunity. Like, you could give any of these like characters bigger backstory or motive or reason to be. Like, I do not believe that Latinx woman would have wanted her, like, would want another woman to suffer. Like, why was she so vindictive of someone who had always taken care of her? Because this was her social worker who had always been looking out for her. I didn't believe it. I don't believe that narrative.
Yeah, they tried to like make
appreciate.
Yeah, that like because she took the kids away, that's and like she blamed her. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it's like the implication is just like that. What we are evil, right? Because they're like, even like the guy who was like into witchcraft, like he wasn't a hero really. Like there was parts of him, but he was just like honestly just there to help her. She did it. Like the fact that she got, so at the end, there's like this scene where the daughter's gonna get drowned in the pool, and she like, the mom jumps in and fights La Llorona and gets her necklace. And when I saw that, it was just like, so what are you saying? That this woman loves her kids more than any other
400 years of mothers
did not love their kids enough to fight back this? Like, you're going to tell me a Latinx woman did not fight back a La Llorona? Like, you're going to cast us as being sassy and having like switchblades in our shoes, but we don't fight La Llorona? I don't think so. Like, now it's coming out.
It's a white savior trope. I mean,
yes. Yeah.
It really
sucks.
And like, what? Did she stabbed La Llorona with a cross at the end? I guess, to be fair, the MacGuffin was that the cross was from the ashes of the tree or whatever in Mexico.
We found the one man in whatever Colorado.
It was Los Angeles.
He had the cross.
They just got real lucky that she happened to be in the same place.
I mean, it's very clear that this isn't canon because that was in the 80s and La Llorona's still around, so.
Yeah, she's still here. Yeah, well, it just took this one lady who loves her kids way more than any person of color and killed her, and that's it. It's all done. Ages and ages, centuries of being afraid of this woman who's been so scorned is now done. We did it. Thanks.
Really easy.
Yeah.
It's too easy.
Yeah. But I think what we are missing is that there are some decent things about this film.
Yeah, no,
the
good stuff.
cinematography
It was good
was decent.
in that way. Yeah, great shots.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of long shots. There's good pacing. There was really good, just traditional like jump scares and spooks.
Children were yeeted.
She just yeeted them right out the house.
Yeah, that's cool.
Suspense was done really well in areas.
And I think that was what the movie was, right? They I mean, think of it, right? The whoever went into Hollywood and was like, listen, La Llorona, you put that out, people are gonna come.
Yeah.
Because it's such like a classic. That's honestly just like putting out a movie and calling it The Boogeyman. Just do it. And people will be like, all right, well, what is it? Like, I mean, what is it? It's a little better than that because it's not in this country, right? But yeah.
Yeah, there are ways to take traditional folklore and do it. And I just feel like it's a little, you're cheating. You're cheating by making all of the actual Latin characters be villains or just less than the protagonist. But it was a decent scare.
Yeah, like it was a
fun.
fun movie to
fun.
watch visually.
We also, I just wanted to touch on, Sergio did not watch this with us, but
we did.
We watched Culture Shock, which is also from 2019. It's part of Hulu's Into the Dark series. Like every month or every holiday, there's a new film. So this thriller follows a young Mexican woman in pursuit of the American dream who crosses illegally into the United States, only to find herself in an American nightmare. It is directed by Gigi Salguero. I'm so sorry. I'm very bad at Spanish.
Guerrero. Did you like it? Because I saw a lot of trailers for it, and the trailers seemed very, I don't know, like Fallout-esque. You know what I mean? Where it was like you got like this like happy American look, but it's a little off. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like the dialogue wasn't selling me. Was it good?
Was it the Stepford Wives kind of?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool because it started entirely in Spanish, so that part was fun. Because I was like, oh, nice. It's not just English the whole time. Good.
Yeah.
And then it was like the first 45 minutes, I think, were in Spanish. And then
Oh, wow. How long was the movie?
Like an hour and a half? Maybe I'm exaggerating.
Like an hour and 50. It wasn't 45, but it was like an hour and some change. But it was a good, it was a good chunk. And because the beginning is her in Mexico, and it's her essentially kind of, she had tried to cross before, had been raped. And so she's now pregnant and then wants to go again.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I did not get that from the trailer.
Yeah. Because they don't talk, like, they never show her Mexican, like, adventures. Right?
That's true, yeah.
Which is, like, what I thought was the best part of the film. I wanted to just watch
very
that.
strong. It was intense. It was real. It was stressful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was, the first half was good.
Yeah. Until we got to, like, Black Mirror territory, it was a good like suspense thriller, and I feel like it could have gone a different way. And then as soon as we got to the Stepford Wives kind of world, it turned and was just like unbelievable. Like it wasn't really like I didn't feel intense. Like I was just like, what's happening? I'm confused. And she wasn't reacting normally. The world wasn't reacting. Like nothing felt real. And like I guess that's the point. But it was still like it didn't feel off like creepy. It just felt off like bad.
Well, the thing I got out of it is it seems like it was trying to show the stress of like being whitewashed or like losing your heritage when you come to America. At least that's like kind of what I think it was trying to say, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
That's the risk that you run when you try to do something stylized like that, right? Like a commentary through a visual medium by putting everyone in a situation like it's like some sort of zombie town, you know what I mean? I was interested in that concept though. But I don't know, I felt like the way that it was written, so it wasn't cliche when it got there?
No, it was cliche. It was very blatant, like we are living the American dream.
Right.
Welcome to our white picket fence. Like, it was
Right.
very like that. It was
Okay.
like, we
Yeah.
eat
And then
we eat pie and
Everyone
fireworks.
spoke English suddenly when they
Very
had,
well.
like, they didn't have any accent.
Oh,
her
interesting.
name was Marisol, and
Yeah,
it
her
was
name was
Marisol.
Yeah,
was
like her
how
name
it
was
was
Marisol,
said.
Wow.
and the mayor would be like, "Hey, Marisol," and it died every time. He's like, "Hey, Marisol," and I was like, "Ow!"
Was it a good message though? Like, did it?
I think what she was trying to do was really good, and there was parts of it that really resonated. So, like, again, the whole part, there's this really great scene in the beginning where there's a bunch of women who are gonna essentially try to cross the border, and her mom is like this, like, she's like taking care of the kids, and so she goes around and she's like, everyone raise your hand if you are not pregnant, and there's like maybe 7 women who are there, and 2 of them raise their hand because of the conditions of this world. That's why they want to leave, right? And then she tells the 2 girls who aren't pregnant that they need to take a contraceptive so that if they go and something happens, they do not get pregnant. And one of the girls is refusing because she's Catholic. So it's like this, like, that was awesome, right? To see that and to see this very real issue. I would have liked to see more of like why she was leaving, because it felt like they were kind of softening it.
Yeah, the horrors were more of the journey, not of what they were leaving.
Yeah.
Like, that it was dangerous to get there.
Yeah.
Which I think is good.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
but I think it would have been beneficial
Right.
for an American audience
Right.
to hear why they want to leave. Because that's a big argument, right? It's like, why would you even do all that, right? And we didn't really get that. I didn't really get why she was doing all that. And in the end, spoilers, she goes back. So it's like, what are you even doing?
Wow.
But there's like this scene where they're like escaping whatever's happening. And there's like an announcement. it's just like, alert, like blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, secure all exits or something. And one of the male protagonists turns to the protagonist and is just like, what did they say? But in Spanish. So there's like the subtitles. And she goes, I don't know. And like, she's like, I don't freaking know. And they're like running through because they don't know English. It was just because of that simulation. So that I thought was really cute. I enjoyed that.
Interesting.
They humanized a traditionally demonized character because he was like a gangster, right? But he was humanized by the end of it and was a hero in his own right.
That's cool.
They showed one of the real terrors, honestly, was the cartel. Like, we see them for even just a moment, but they were ruthless. They were scary. They're the ones who had like the bloody count, right? Like, so it was really like,
It gave you a little, like, flash of why it's scary.
yeah, like why you want to leave.
Yeah.
And what was really great about that scene is that they're huddled and their coyote is like, everyone be quiet. If they hear us, we have to run. And so then she turns and she's like, if who hears us? And so you think, because they're traveling, that it's probably the American guards because they're close to the wall, whatever. And then he goes, the cartel. And then it's like, then we see that. So it's like, whoa, what a spin. And I would have kind of, I don't know. I think that once it got into Pleasantville, it got weird. And I just didn't feel like stressed. I was just like, what's happening? I just felt
It was
foggy.
confusing, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, when are we going to get to the scary? Like, even when people were acting weird, even when they
Like, it
all
was
stopped and
eerie,
like
but,
looked.
like,
But it
yeah.
felt like you were just doing textbook things. It didn't feel revolutionary. But every other part when they were actually being like Mexican was awesome. And I was like, I want just that. Just cut out that middle part. I don't care. Get out. Eat that. And then bring me back the actual thing. But definitely go and watch it. It's interesting. I think it should get more views because I think people should see it. And it does tell a great story.
Yeah, like, I don't think it was bad. It had its moments where I guess, like, it could have been better. But it was interesting. It was definitely a really interesting film.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. And then everyone this is just a PSA from Gabe to go out and watch Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Because it features a Mexican protagonist boy. And he deals with racial profiling. It's taking place like late 60s, early 70s, right before Nixon becomes president. And so it's like there's a lot of racism because Guillermo's not just going to like let a story be a story. He's gonna put a political backdrop on it. And his choice to put that boy in it was amazing because he didn't have to. If someone else did it, it wouldn't have happened. It wasn't like imperative, but it was awesome that it was there.
And he was like a normal boy. Like, it
yeah,
wasn't
he was
like,
just there.
That's awesome.
He didn't like
Yeah.
he didn't have a crazy accent.
Right.
He was smart. He helped and was like
You saw
very
he was just like
impactful.
a person just being there, and people were being so awful to him.
Yeah, there's like a thing where they profile him and say that he has a a switchblade. They're like, what's a switchblade? And he's like, I don't. He like doesn't answer them, and then later he does have a switchblade, and he like breaks into this place.
Oh.
So it was like, but it felt kind of cute instead of just being like a stereotype.
Exactly.
Like it was kind of like, audience,
Right.
like get in this joke with us. Like it was cute, as opposed to being like, oh,
that.
really. Really, of course. Like, as if they hadn't said that and he just pulled it out later,
right.
I would have been like, why does he have a switchblade? Like,
Exactly.
I would have been mad. So it was
because
great.
they set it up the right way. Yeah.
Like, the cops are being rude. The people are calling them racial slurs. Like, it was in there. And it was...
In a kid's movie, which is, I mean, I guess good for knowledge of things that happen in the world. Gives them a nice reality flash.
Yeah, sometimes life is awful. So... sign up for it.
Feelings. Yeah, feelings. Yeah, I said feelings. Let's talk about feelings. Okay. And all that spooky stuff. I love spooky stuff.
So I guess for me anyway, for this
first
movie.
explain what it is to people.
What it is?
So if you like it, it's...
So if we liked it, La Llorona nos llevó. Because she took us, she grabbed us, she drowned us.
Yeah.
That's if we liked it.
We liked it.
That's good. That's
a positive. If we didn't like it, no nos llevó. We lived. No nos llevó. We got away.
Nice.
No one asked to be alive, so I back this plan he
this
has.
seems pretty solid to what our literature usually is here.
Yeah.
So for the topic of Latinx representation in horror, I would say what it is currently. What is your feelings?
Okay. As far as representation is concerned, no me llevo. No me llevo. I definitely feel like Linda Cardinelli came at her with a cross, and it just felt super white savory. Yeah, I didn't like how the direction of the shaman he came in. They gave him weird lines. They made him like this bizarre, campy. Like we didn't know what he wanted to be. He didn't know what he wanted to be. Not the antagonist, not the hero. The kids at the beginning were, I don't know. It just felt weird. And the kids' moms, the Latinx mom, like completely unfounded her anger, her vitriol, her behavior. No me llevo.
No me llevo. Same. I think we could do better. I think we're trying to do something, right? Like with giving more opportunities to directors of color and Latinx background, we are giving the opportunity to tell those stories. And I think we won't really have like succeeded until we have like a Latinx family or Latinx protagonist, and that's not the
like
dialogue.
The focus.
Yeah, like they're just there. Like we don't like I would like us to not have to make horror films about immigration and how horrific it is to travel here and to get in the possibility of being ripped from here. I don't want those stories because that's horror already. That is horror that people are living all the time. Mm-hmm. So instead, if we could just tell a classic, just like any ghost story, like could we just have a haunted house that has a Latin family in it and they just are doing what you're supposed to do in a horror movie? Let's write it. Let's star in it. Let's direct. Let's do it. Give us money.
I volunteer to die.
Yes, let's have that. Let's make a big bad.
You already did in Saw 9.
That's true. That's true.
You didn't die. You're still there.
She got out?
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
I'm just chilling.
The whale was doing
something. Oh, the whale did.
The whale did that.
The whale is the true villain.
Yeah. If you guys watch our film Saw 9, if you didn't know that we had a film called Saw 9, you should go to our YouTube. The wonderful narrator of that is Sergio.
Yeah, it's my voice.
So if you like this voice, listen to it. And you can also listen to our voices. It's literally like a minute and a half. So
it's
just
fun.
watch it.
It's real weird, but it's fun.
It's super fun. Yeah. Kat, how do you feel about Latinx?
I think not enough has been done, as you guys have said. Hopefully we get a Latinx Get Out and then a Latinx Us, but their own, unique version where we have one that's like defining of what's happening, and then just it's normal to have a full Latinx cast and that people will still go see that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we're only going to get that if we give those opportunities to Latinx directors and producers. We can tell some really good stories if you let us. Even just Latinx-American, right? We have a very specific story to tell as well.
Yeah, if you guys make a movie, I volunteer. Yeah. I'll be fodder for it.
Yeah.
It's my
you
turn.
can be the sassy friend.
Yeah, I'll ask if you're okay.
Yeah, are you okay? You can be over sexualized.
Oh, that'd be an awkward movie.
Omega. Thank you so much, Sergio. This is great having you on. I hope our listeners are really enjoying it and enjoying this series. If you have any questions for Sergio, be sure to email us at theghouls@gmail.com. But if people want to see what you're doing and hear about live update or anything, where can they find you?
Yeah. You can follow us on Twitter at Live Sound Group, LiveSoundGroup.
Nice.
At Live Sound Group. And you can also listen to us on WPPM.
Yeah. Awesome. And we will share some more details. You can contact us if you want more information on Sergio. But this is our episode on Latinx representation. We're going to be diving into queer horror next week. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a real fun ride. And I have a feeling this isn't going to be the last of it. Like, I'm sure we're going to have way more to say. I know I will.
Yeah,
because
all
I'm
the
never
things.
done. I'm not done until we out there. Until I'm on screen, we're not done.
Well, yeah, until we start to see solutions, it shouldn't stop being talked about.
Yeah, amen. Snaps.
Snaps to
Snaps for
that.
cat. So don't get married.
Delete your kids.
Yeah, or drown them.
them.